Hello, welcome to Broadcasting Scotland. It's Monday the 24th of January. I'm Andrew Wilson and this is Scotland at 7. I have to apologise for our late start this evening. As Burns would say, the best laid plans. However, we are here now and I'm looking forward this evening to firstly providing you with today's coronavirus update and then together looking at the headlines from Scotland and around the world and the news today. As of 2 p.m. today, there are 6,934 new cases identified using either a first lateral flow test or a PCR test. The number of those who have tested positive, 1,435 were in hospital last night, 38 of whom were in intensive care. There are no new reported deaths of people who have tested positive in Scotland, and that means that the number of patients in Scotland who have died from complications caused by the coronavirus infection now stands at 10,198. This number only includes those who have died having received a positive test for the virus in the previous 28 days. The latest UK daily figures show that a total of 153,916 patients who tested positive for COVID-19 have sadly died from their illness, and that is an increase of 56 since yesterday. This number refers to deaths in all settings, not just in hospitals. And as of 7:30 a.m. this morning, 4,406,439 people had received their first dose of the COVID-19 vaccination, 4,108,252 had received their second dose, and 3,258,073 had received their third or booster dose. The SNP has said that the UK government is so caught up in its scandal and distracted by sleaze that it is failing to tackle the Tory cost of living crisis, and has called for an emergency financial package to support families and reverse rising UK poverty. Leading an Opposition Day debate at Westminster today, David Linden MP said that Tory cuts, regressive tax hikes, and the soaring cost of Brexit have squeezed household budgets and pushed millions into poverty. But Tory ministers are failing to reverse the damage that they have caused. The SNP's shadow work and pension person said that the Tory government can't escape the fact that its policies have left families demonstrably worse off. And he urged Tory MPs to get rid of Boris Johnson without further delay, so the UK government can focus on tackling the crisis. Commenting ahead of the debate, David Linden MP said, "The UK government is so caught up in scandal and distracted by sleaze that it is failing in its basic duty to protect people from the worsening Tory cost of living crisis. Tory MPs must finally show Boris Johnson the door so they can turn their attention to delivering the support that families urgently need and reversing the rising poverty on their watch." 12 years of Tory cuts, regressive tax hikes, and the soaring cost of Brexit have squeezed household budgets and pushed people into poverty. This Tory government cannot escape the fact that it has left families worse off and is failing to reverse the damage it has caused. The US and the UK are withdrawing diplomats' families from Ukraine, but the EU has said the dependents will stay put for now, amid heightened fears of a Russian invasion. The State Department told the dependents of staffers at the US Embassy in Kiev that they must leave the country. It also said that non-essential embassy staff could leave Ukraine at government expense. US officials stressed the Kiev embassy would remain open and that Sunday's announcement did not constitute an evacuation. The move had been under consideration for some time and did not reflect an easing of US support for Ukraine, the officials said. Military action by Russia could come at any time, the US Embassy said. Officials will not be in a position to evacuate American citizens in such a contingency, so US citizens currently present in Ukraine should plan accordingly, it added. The UK government, the Foreign Office, said today that some UK staff and dependents were being withdrawn, but the EU Foreign Policy Chief Josep Borrell said the EU did not plan to follow suit now. Ahead of a meeting between Josep Borrell in Brussels and his EU counterparts, with the US Secretary of State Antony Blinken joining by video link, a senior European official said the EU would be ready to launch sanctions within days if Russian troops launched an invasion. Rising tensions about Russia's military buildup on the Ukraine border were not eased during talks on Friday between Blinken and the Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov, which were held in Geneva. On Sunday, a senior Ukraine government advisor said the country was reacting seriously to UK allegations that Moscow has plans to invade the country and install a puppet government, and that Kiev was resisting Russian efforts to destabilise its government and economy. The Foreign Office claims that Moscow may topple the government and install Yevhen Murayev, a former MP who controls a pro-Russia television station, were met with shock and some scepticism in Ukrainian political and media circles on the weekend. The Foreign Office made the allegations as the UK pledged to take a more aggressive posture over Russia's build-up of more than 100,000 troops and weaponry on the border with Ukraine. Meanwhile, NATO said today that it was putting forces on standby and reinforcing Eastern Europe with more ships and fighter jets in what Russia denounced as an escalation of tensions over Ukraine. Welcoming a series of deployments announced by alliance members in recent days, Secretary-General Jens Stoltenberg said that NATO would continue to take all necessary measures to protect and defend all allies, including by reinforcing the eastern part of the alliance. The move was a further sign that the West is bracing for Russia to attack its neighbour after amassing an estimated 100,000 troops in reach of the Ukrainian border. Russia denies planning an invasion, but having engineered the crisis by surrounding Ukraine with forces from the north, east and south, Moscow is now citing the Western response as evidence to support its narrative that Russia is the target, not the instigator, of aggression. Denmark, Spain, France and the Netherlands were all planning on or considering sending troops, planes or ships to Eastern Europe, NATO said. Ukraine shares borders with 4 NATO countries: Poland, Slovakia, Hungary and Romania. The United States has also made clear that it is considering increasing its military presence in the eastern part of the alliance, NATO said. US officials said the Pentagon was finalising efforts to identify specific units that could deploy. The United States is considering sending thousands of additional troops to NATO's eastern flank, 2 US officials told Reuters. One of the officials said that up to 5,000 could be deployed. A NATO diplomat said that Washington was considering gradually transferring some troops stationed in Western Europe to Eastern Europe in the coming weeks. A Polish official, meanwhile, said that Warsaw would, however, draw the line at sending troops to Ukraine. Only the findings of Sue Gray's report into alleged lockdown-breaking parties at Downing Street will be published, Nadhim Zahawi has said, in another apparent step by the government away from the promised full transparency with what the senior civil servant uncovers. The English Education Secretary's comments come after Dominic Raab, the Justice Secretary for England and Deputy Prime Minister, said on Sunday that it would be up to Boris Johnson to decide how much information was released. The keenly awaited report by Gray, a senior civil servant tasked with looking into claims about a series of parties at Number 10 and around government during COVID restrictions, is expected to be completed later this week. Asked if it would be published in full, Zahawi told BBC Radio 4's Today programme, "So the terms of reference for Sue Gray's report is that the findings of the report will be made public, and the Prime Minister has pledged he will come to Parliament to then make a statement and be scrutinised by colleagues on the findings of that report." Asked if that meant that it would not be fully released, Zahawi said, "The findings of Sue Gray's report will be made public, that is the terms of reference. I think that will ensure public confidence. She can follow the evidence wherever it takes her, and she's doing exactly that." Asked the same question on Sunday, Raab told the BBC, Quite the way, the process for it will be for the Prime Minister to decide, but there will be full transparency. He has said he will come back to the Commons and make a statement, so there will be full scrutiny. When Johnson initially announced an internal investigation into the claims, led by Cabinet Secretary Simon Case, he told MPs that a copy of Case's full report would be put in the library of the House of Commons, guaranteeing full access. However, the formal terms of reference say only the findings of the investigations will be made public. Gray took over the process of the investigation from Case after claims that his office also held a social gathering. While it would be expected that personal details of some staff would be removed from any published report, releasing just the findings is likely to exclude evidence such as emails, text messages, or transcripts of interviews, or precise details about what happened at any of the alleged gatherings. The Metropolitan Police has apologised and paid compensation to an academic for sexist, derogatory and unacceptable language used by officers about her while they strip searched her. "What's that smell? Oh, it's her knickers," officers at a North East London police station said to each other after Dr. Constantia Duff was held down on the floor and her clothes cut off. "Is she rank?" another policeman said. The Met apologised to Duff, who is an assistant professor of philosophy at the University of Nottingham, after CCTV video capturing the officers' conversations was disclosed to her as part of a civil action against the force. Inspector Andy O'Donnell of the Met's Directorate of Professional Standards told her, "I would like to take this opportunity to sincerely and unreservedly apologise for the sexist, derogatory and unacceptable language used about you, and for any upset and distress this may have caused." Duff said, "In every detail, the footage backed up what I said in my statements for years and years." Officers had claimed they had acted with professionalism, strip-searching her for her own safety because she would not give them her name. "There was a barrage of misinformation that they put out that I actually, even though I was there and I knew that it was false, had almost started to doubt myself," she said. Duff was arrested on the 5th of May 2013 on suspicion of obstructing and assaulting police after trying to hand a legal advice card to a 15-year-old caught in a stop and search sweep in Hackney, allegations she was later cleared of in court. She was taken to Stoke Newington Police Office, where Sergeant Curtis Howard, in charge of the custody area, ordered the search when she refused to cooperate with officers. In 2018, Howard appeared before a disciplinary panel which cleared him of gross misconduct. He argued the search was necessary to assess any risk Duff might pose to herself, and its chair concluded his actions were those of a responsible officer. The CCTV footage now obtained by Duff of the police station custody area on the day she was searched shows Howard telling officers to show her resistance is futile and to search her by any means necessary. "Treat her like a terrorist," he says. "I don't care." In a cell, 3 female officers bound Duff by her hands and feet, pinned her to the floor and cut off her clothes with scissors. Duff described the ordeal, which left her with a number of visible injuries, as being like a sexual assault. The Met did not say whether any officers had faced disciplinary action, but said allegations of misconduct relating to the comments had been referred to its Professional Standards Directorate. This investigation remains ongoing, the Met said. But Duff said that individual officers were not the issue. She said the exchanges shown in the CCTV exposed the culture of sexualised mockery, the dehumanising attitude shown to her during her strip search. Officers' taunts of her in the cell, out of view of CCTV, were worse than those captured on camera, she said. The WikiLeaks founder Julian Assange will be able to go to the Supreme Court in the UK to challenge a decision allowing him to be extradited to the US to face espionage charges. However, the High Court refused him permission for a direct appeal, meaning that the Supreme Court will first have to decide whether or not it will hear his challenge. The High Court last month ruled that the WikiLeaks co-founder can be extradited, as it overturned a judgment earlier last year based on concerns about Assange's mental health and the risk of suicide in a US maximum security prison. In their ruling in December, the High Court judges sided with the US authorities after a package of assurances were put forward that Assange would not face those strictest measures unless he committed an act in the future that required them. In their short pronouncement on Monday, the Lord Chief Justice Lord Burnett and Lord Justice Holroyd ruled there was a point of law, but denied Assange's permission for the appeal. They said that Assange had raised 3 points of law for the Supreme Court bid, but only succeeded on one about the use of assurances in extradition hearings. They added it was for the Supreme Court justices to make the final decision. Assange, who remains in prison, would have other routes to fight his extradition, irrespective of what happens in relation to any Supreme Court appeal. Were he to fail, his lawyers could, for example, mount a cross-appeal at a lower court level, which would take place first at the High Court and focus on questions of free speech and political motivation of the extradition request. In Vermont, lawmakers are considering bills to make it easier to prosecute people who threaten election officials. And in Maine, proposed legislation would stiffen penalties for such intimidation. Meanwhile, in Washington, state senators voted this month to make threatening election workers a felony. The measures follow recent investigative reports documenting a wave of threats and harassment against election administrators by Donald Trump supporters who embrace the former president's false voting fraud claims. Sponsors and supporters of the legislation in all 3 states cited Reuters reporting as an impetus for proposing tougher enforcement. The Washington State Senator David Frocht, a Seattle Democrat, said the reports gave us more evidence to build support for legislation to hold accountable those who threaten election officials. In Maine, a bill authored by the Democratic State Representative Bruce White would enhance penalties for anyone who intentionally interferes by force, violence, or intimidation with election administration. The Secretary of State, Shenna Bellows, cited the Reuters reporting in testimony supporting the bill. In all, Reuters documented more than 850 threats and hostile messages to US election officials and workers. Nearly all the communications echoed Trump's baseless claims that he lost the 2020 election because of fraud. More than 100 of the threats could meet the federal threshold for criminal prosecution, according to law professors and attorneys who reviewed them. Prosecutions in such cases have been rare, but on Friday, a US Department of Justice task force on election threats announced its first indictment, charging a Texas man for posting online threats against 3 officials in Georgia. An assistant attorney general said the case is among dozens being investigated by the task force, which was formed shortly after Reuters in June published the first in the series of reports on election-related threats. In Vermont, menacing voicemails to the Secretary of State Jim Kondos and his staff, and a decision by police and prosecutors not to seek charges, spurred lawmakers to reconsider state laws that enshrine some of America's oldest and strongest free speech protections. 2 measures introduced this month would make it easier to charge suspects for criminal threats and toughen penalties when they target public officials. An unidentified man left a first round of hostile messages for Kondos' office shortly after the 2020 election. Then, last autumn, the same man left voicemails threatening Kondos and his staff, along with 2 Reuters journalists who had interviewed the man about his earlier threats. "Justice is coming," the man warned in an October message. "All you dirty cocksuckers are about to get popped. I guarantee it," he said. These voicemails do cross the line, Kondos wrote in an October 27 email to lawmakers, which was reviewed by Reuters. Federal officials considered the threat serious enough to investigate, but Reuters asked Vermont officials about the October threat. The Federal Bureau of Investigation began an inquiry into the matter, according to 2 local law enforcement officials. Scotland's Transport Minister Graham Day has tendered his resignation from the Scottish Government for health-related reasons. Mr Day served as Minister for Parliamentary Business and Veterans from 2018 and was appointed Transport Minister following the 2021 Holyrood elections. Accepting his resignation, the First Minister said he had been a formidable minister and would be welcome to return in future should circumstances allow. Writing to the First Minister, Mr Day said, "It has been an absolute privilege to serve as a minister in the Scottish Government, firstly as Minister for Parliamentary Business and Veterans, and latterly as Minister for Transport. I have always prided myself on being able to give 100% to any that I am charged with. Regrettably, despite my continuing passion, I find myself unable now to give this hugely important ministerial role everything it rightly requires and deserves. It is therefore with regret that I am returning to from office as Minister for Transport in the Scottish Government. Jenny Gilruth will take on the transport portfolio with immediate effect, overseeing a range of policy areas including the upcoming transfer of Scotland's railways into public hands, reducing carbon emissions from our transport network, and delivering new ferries for our island communities. As a member of the Net Zero portfolio, she will play a key role in ensuring Scotland meets our climate targets. Neil Gray MSP will join the Scottish Government as Minister for Culture, Europe and International Development, subject to parliamentary approval. Working with the Cabinet Secretary for the Constitution, he will lead on major events, the creative industries and international development. And the fees paid by the Scottish Government to optometrists to carry out NHS-funded eye examinations will increase by 3%, and that will help to ensure everyone can continue to access high-quality eye care. Scotland became the only UK nation to introduce free universal NHS-funded eye examinations in 2006, and the year before the COVID-19 pandemic, 2018-19, a record 2.3 million people had their eyes examined by an optometrist under this service. The increase will be backdated to include all general ophthalmic services, eye examinations, which provide both a sight test and an eye health check, undertaken from the 1st of April 2021. The Public Health Minister Marie Todd MSP said, "General ophthalmic services is one of many NHS success stories in Scotland. The introduction in 2006 of free universal NHS-funded eye examinations sets Scotland apart from the rest of the UK, and this government is committed to maintaining this policy. Increasing the fees paid to optometrists for providing this vital service ensures everyone across the country can continue to access high-quality eye care services." And that was our final story this evening. In making these programmes, Broadcasting Scotland relies on the support of viewers and others through our distinctive approach to news, current affairs and culture. If you would like to support us, and we really need your support, the cost of producing these every penny that we raise is committed to the costs of producing these programmes. Costing these programmes continues to increase. And so please, if you would like to support us, then please consider subscribing at only £5 a month or donating to Broadcasting Scotland, and you will find the link to do that on the screen now. There are other ways in which you can contribute to our work. If you would like to volunteer to work with Broadcasting Scotland, either behind the scenes or in front of the cameras, or in any other way that helps our work and promotes the station, then please visit our website at www.broadcastingscotland.com and send us a message there. Meantime, we will be here again at 7 o'clock tomorrow evening for the next edition of Scotland at 7, so please tune in then. I hope that you have a great rest of your Monday evening. I hope that everybody keeps warm and keeps well. Bye-bye.